If you are not legally protected in your business, you are leaving money on the table. Hey, I get it. The legal side of business can feel intimidating, but the good news is it doesn't have to be. If you want to build your business on a strong foundation, and if you want to know that your rights are protected when the unexpected happens with a client or a customer, then it's time to get legally protected. This means no more using free contracts that you downloaded off of the internet. This means partnering with a law firm that actually believes in your vision and can help you achieve it. This means legally protecting your brand so that no one can steal your good ideas. There are a lot of ways to grow and scale, but if you want to grow a strong business, it's time to get legally protected. If you're listening and resonating with this, then my signature service, the Legal Upgrade, just might be perfect for you. The Legal Upgrade is a straightforward, structured process to give your business the legal protection that it needs to thrive. Click the link in the show notes and schedule a call with me today. Hello and welcome to the Legal Upgrade Podcast. I'm your host, licensed attorney Christian Hammond. This podcast breaks down the legal side of business to reveal key legal strategies that can help you take your business to the next level. Please note that none of the following is legal, tax, investment, financial, or medical advice. Without further ado, let's get into the show. What is the number one legal pitfall that business owners fall into during a rebrand? What is the number one legal thing that tends to trip people up? My law firm is going through its own, what I'm calling a facelift, so it only seemed appropriate to talk today about this really important topic of rebranding. As a trademark lawyer, I am often called upon to help businesses through a rebrand because trademark law is so pivotal when going through this process. And there can be many different reasons for a rebrand. Sometimes it's because your business has matured. Maybe you started out selling one thing and your original business name kind of reflected that singular focus, but now you're selling many different things. So it's time to switch to a new name, a new brand that reflects the maturity of where the business is now. Maybe the original name you picked for your business, honestly, you never liked it. It was a stand-in until you could think of something better. And finally, sometimes business owners find themselves rebranding under stress. They've gone through that moment of getting the cease and desist letter. Somebody else owns the trademark, and they are forced to rebrand or otherwise face litigation. So there could be many different reasons for a rebrand, and there's so many things going on as a CEO, and the legal side of rebranding is often the last thing on a CEO's mind, right? With everything else going on, with all the people you're hiring, with all the things that you're coordinating, the legal side of it is probably the last thing on your mind, and yet it's so key to making sure that rebrand is a success. So with the clients that I've helped through a rebrand, with the businesses that I have helped to see through this process, what is the number one pitfall I have seen? Are you guys ready for it? The number one pitfall I have seen, the number one legal pitfall I have seen during a rebrand is buying a super expensive domain name when you haven't even gotten the trademark. Buying a super expensive domain when you're not even sure if legally you can own those words. You can own that name. You can own that name that is incorporated into the domain. And I know that this is going to be controversial because domains are super sexy. I'm not even really sure why. If you have an idea about why that is, please pop in the chat and let me know. But it seems to me that owning domains feels really sexy to people. It's often one of the first things that they go to buy or the first thing they go to invest in. But let me break down why, to me, this is the number one legal pitfall during a rebrand. It's because a sought after domain, which in this day and age is pretty much any standard English word followed by .com, .io, or any of the other popular top levels. A sought after domain name can be pretty expensive. It could easily be 10 grand. I've seen it for 20 grand. I've seen them for higher. So it can easily be a pretty expensive investment. But if you have not trademarked that new business name that you are selecting, how do you plan on protecting that investment? How do you plan on protecting this $10,000 website address that you have just purchased? And this gets to the misunderstanding of that many business owners fall into of what trademarks are and what they are not. A lot of business owners think, "Hey, I have a LLC, so that protects my business name, right?" No, it doesn't. A lot of business owners think that buying a domain protects their business name, but it doesn't. A lot of business owners think that having a trade name protects their business name, but it doesn't. Depending on what state you're in, you might be familiar with the term trade name, or in your state, it might be a DBA, or it might be a fictitious business name. These are all synonyms for the exact same thing. But regardless, you could have an LLC, you could have a domain name, you could have a trade name, fictitious business name, DBA. None of that is legal ownership of a business name. There is only one legal method that legally protects a business name, and that is the trademark. And this is what trips people up, because they're like, I spent $10,000 on this domain, and you're telling me that I don't own this name legally? No. You could have spent $1 million on that domain, and it would not stop somebody else from copying your brand name. It would not stop somebody else from sending you a cease and desist and saying, "Hey, I own this trademark. It is federally registered in the national database, and I don't care how much you paid for this domain, you are copying my business name." That is so crucial for entrepreneurs to understand. And so I'm not saying don't make these investments. I'm not saying don't invest in your rebrand. I'm not saying just go halfway. What I am saying, though, is that when it comes to rebranding, one of the top priorities needs to be locking down that name, because everything else is depending on it. And so if you don't have that assurance that you legally own that name, all the rest of this investment, the time, the money, the designers, all the people that you're hiring, all the rest of that investment is really vulnerable. So I want to illustrate this with two different clients that I have helped through their rebranding process, so you guys can see how this turned out and just how things played out. And again, if you're just jumping in, feel free to jump in the chat, introduce yourself, say hi, ask questions. Let me know if this is something you already knew, or if this is something that you are hearing for the first time. So I want to talk about two different clients that I've helped through a rebrand, and how this whole trademark law process played into what happened. So the first client was a coach, and this client had already decided they wanted to rebrand. And I want to say that they were already done. Like, everything was designed, everything was ready, the rebrand was over, and they got a cease and desist from another company with the same name. And that company was in a different country. Now, this might be shocking to some of you, because you might think, hey, if I'm a US business and I'm only operating in the US, I don't have to worry about somebody in Spain, somebody in Kenya, somebody in Brazil, right? Not necessarily. So even though, they might be in a different country, that might be where they're headquartered, they might still have a United States trademark. And that is exactly what happened to this client. So she was a US business, And this business was in a different country, but they had taken the time to get a United States trademark. So they sent her a cease and desist and said, you need to change the name. And like I said, she was either in the middle of the rebrand or the rebrand was already over and like they were ready to launch. So what happened was that they hired me. I looked at everything and it was clear that we were going to need to change the name. So I worked with that client and we were able to find a different name that they were excited about, that they liked, that matched up with the vibe of the rebrand they were going for. And we were able to get that trademark application submitted. And that diffused the situation with the other company, made the cease and desist situation go away. And now that client is on, happily able to use the rebrand that they invested in. So that was one client, and that really illustrates the importance of checking up front, because you don't want to get to the end of your rebrand and get a cease and desist. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. So that was one client example, and I'll give you one more story. So this client, different industry, this client is a designer. And this client came to me at the beginning before they really got too deep into the rebranding process. And they had already identified a name that they really liked. Well, got into it, started investigating it, started looking at the other competitors and possible conflicts in the space. And I discovered that there was someone else in their industry, and it was a pretty niche industry, using a similar name. And even though technically maybe we could have gotten that trademark approved, it would have caused friction. It would have made things awkward when they were at trade shows and just seeing this other company around, in their industry. And so I was able to work with that client and we were able to come up with an alternative name. And because we did that at the beginning, it avoided the awkwardness of launching with this name that would have been problematic. It avoided wasted resources or wasted time, maybe investing in this name that would have caused problems for them down the line. And so by addressing it at the very beginning, this client was able to pivot to a name that they actually still liked, and then move on with their trademarking process and with their rebranding process. So these are two examples of just how this plays out in real life. And again, I thought this was such an important topic today because rebranding is such a pivotal moment for a business. There are so many things going on, and as the CEO, the founder, the business owner, the legal side is probably the last thing on your mind, and yet it is so important. Locking down that trademark early is so key to bringing peace to the process, bringing assurance to the process, and making sure that the investment you're making in that rebrand is legally legit and legally sound. That's what I have for you guys. Thank you so much for joining, for jumping in, for asking your questions, for commenting, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. The Legal Upgrade Podcast is a Bevel Law production. For more information about the Legal Upgrade, you can follow on Instagram at Bevel Law or find even more information on the website bevellaw.com. If you enjoyed the episode, please remember to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. See you next time on the Legal Upgrade Podcast.